The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The Moore Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The Moore Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world on TV, radio and online. I bid you all good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in all the world's time zones. This is The Moore Show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Philip Soloman, who is a spiritualist medium and psychic, considered by many to be one of the best in the world. Yet he only describes himself as just being a very ordinary man, but with a very special gift. His specialist areas include books about ghosts, hauntings, the paranormal, psychic matters, sports and history. Philip has been interviewed on most of the major radio and TV programs across the globe. In the UK where he resides, he has his own weekly radio show on Wolverhampton City Radio, and he has been featured in columns in numerous magazines, including newspapers which include The Express and Star, Take a Break, Fate and Fortune, Psychic World, and many more. Over the years, he has written and published over 20 books. He also gives demonstrations of clairvoyance talks in theatres, universities, colleges, and other venues. Philip Soloman, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kevin. It's nice to be with you.
It's great to have you on. And, I've read some of your books as well, and it's a fascinating biography as well of yourself. Now, just tell the audience a bit about yourself as well, because I believe that your parents were mediums, so you sort of grew up in a mediumistic sort of family as well.
I did indeed. I mean, my mother was quite a famous medium, and my father was a well-known medium as well. Actually, my grandmother was a medium before me, really. I was sort of brought up, really, in a spiritualist background, which is very unusual. Most people who do my work, come into it when they've had a bereavement or something, or have gone along to a church or something. But you're quite right. You've obviously done your research there, Kevin. You're quite right, yes.
Yes, I mean, so why do you ever think why you as a soul, chose to have that sort of family support system there?
Well, I'm a great believer, really, that I think the higher source really gives you opportunities where you want to be. I think we choose to some extent, where we come to in this world and the position that we put in. But I think the higher force also places you where you need to be. And I think particularly with my mother, I think, she was given the role of sort of tutoring me and sort of getting me going for this sort of work, and hopefully in a way that, would bring me to the situation that I am today, that I work with so many different people. And, I hope really do my very best to help all mankind, not just the individuals, And I think having the sort of background that I did with the parents that I had, which my father was also very involved in rock and roll,
Yeah.
So really, I was always in a position really of meeting unusual people, but people with very special spiritual or perhaps musical gifts,
Yeah, absolutely. So as a young kid then, I mean, I suppose you saw things and I had little friends that no one else did in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly saw my autobiography. I remember going along to school and I was quite surprised that other kids, didn't sort of see spirit people. or sort of things like that, you know. I mean, it's got a surprise to me, really. It was very natural to me. I remember seeing my what I would probably call today my great-grandmother, you know, and having a little conversation. I'll be about 2 years of age, you know. And, you know, I mean, it seemed perfectly natural to me. I didn't really even realise it was a, you know, spirit energy. I just thought it was someone, you know, from this world, really, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, with your mother, you say that she was quite a famous psychic. Who was she mixing with with other psychics at the time?
Oh, well, everybody, really. I mean, Mum knew Gordon Higginson and Harry Edwards and all those sort of people. Ray Taylor, who's become the editor of Psychic News, and all those sort of people were close friends of Mother's, really. I mean, you know, I suppose I was very, very lucky as a young boy to get to know the legends of the psychic world, you know. But, I mean, Mother was an unusual character, you know. I mean, people like Doris Collins and Doris Stokes, she knew them quite well.
Oh,
But
Doris Stokes, yeah.
Oh, she was a lovely lady, Doris Stokes, and a really good medium. But, you know, she was the president of our local spiritualist church, my mother, you know. And she never really wanted to go on tour and things like that. But very famous people used to come and see my mum. Funny enough, I mean, I'm not going to, well, you know, I ain't going to name drop, but I mean, I was actually interviewing somebody on my radio last night, a most famous comedian. And I remember him years ago. So they come in to see my mum, you know, and it's strange how things come in full circle, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I suppose the subject was a little bit taboo in that time compared to what you, I mean, you must have seen a great shift from the time that your mother was giving readings to where you are now.
Well, yeah, it's a really good point that you make, that is, Kevin. That's a really good point. I often say to people, especially that, well, I don't like to call myself, I don't think of myself as a celebrity medium, but I know what you mean. And I think we're so lucky today. I mean, you know, we get treated like rock stars, don't we? Perhaps 20 years ago, well, 25 years ago, perhaps 30 years ago, at best we were, I suppose, seen as a little bit eccentric, and I'm putting that in the nicest possible way. But I mean, today they're so lucky, the mediums. I mean, we're treated like rock stars, aren't we? And you know, I mean, I suppose it's nice, the attention. It's nice to have the respect. But you know, I think of those pioneers who've gone before us who did so much. And as you say, you know, people, well, I think they were treated as a little bit funny, if you know what I mean. And it's sad, isn't it, really? But, hey, you know, we're very lucky today, very, very lucky to have the respect that we do.
Well, I mean, you must see a spiritual shift that's going on out there right now. People are looking for answers in different places. People are looking for alternative truths to what they are told is the only option for them. I mean, do you not see, you must see that in the world as well?
Well, you know, I mean, you talked about celebrities and people like that. Really, I think they've been tremendously helpful to us in a lot of ways, with so many famous people who've sort of admitted, you know, their experiences and their beliefs, you know, spiritual pathways and stuff like that, you know. And I think that's opened the doors of awareness for a lot of people, really. And of course, you've got, you know, I think that, you know, we're talking about the mediums. I think you get, I don't know, perhaps some of the mediums like myself who come from a traditionally spiritualist trained way, sort of look down on them as being almost a bit show busy, if you like. But I think they have brought sort of what we believe in to the masses. And, you know, and perhaps people have gone along to theatre shows and, oh, you know what I mean, Kevin. Perhaps it'd be a bit of an entertainment, a bit of a laugh. And then they find that there's a little bit more to it than what they expect. And then they look a little further and perhaps start studying the work of perhaps more serious psychics and mediums and what have you. And I think it's played a large part in opening the floodgates. I think you're quite right. We're in an exciting time, really, when people are so much more prepared to look around the corner rather than just what's in front of them. You know, you've got to learn to look at the world, haven't you, with that third eye, if you like.
Well, that's right.
Sure.
That's right. And it's like that third eye is opened for a lot of people as well. And I mean, obviously, these subjects are a lot more mainstream in America, but slowly over here in the UK, you know, they are gaining some momentum as well. Now with your mother, what religion was she?
Oh, my mother was a spiritualist, of course.
Yeah. But didn't she follow the sort of Christ teachings in a sense?
She did. You know, you've read my autobiography, haven't you? I mean, Mother was very, very much a believer in the work of of Jesus, you know. I mean, she always believed in this man, but I think she saw him really as a great, wonderful, perhaps the greatest medium, the greatest being that ever came down to this world. And she held fast to that view. She had strong Christian views in one way, and yet she was the president also of an SNU church. Not many, strong character, my mother.
Yeah.
Not many ladies who could probably have done that, but she was a strong character, you know, and there you go. I mean, she had a background, I suppose, that made her quite strong in her belief, Christian beliefs, but she was also totally a spiritualist, really, you know. She saw no sort of difficulty between the two, really.
No, I mean, there was never a contradiction between some of the fear-based stuff, in a sense, and the sort of unconditional love, in a sense, from spiritualism.
Yeah, I think I couldn't put it better. Exactly, that was exactly my mother's view of religion and a spiritual way of life. I think mother followed and taught me, you know, to walk a spiritual path rather than a purely religious one. And I think if you take that pathway in life, then, you know, you can sample a little bit of everything, really.
Well, that's it. And I will say, I will say that I think that spiritualism and religion, you know, there is a lot of similarities in there. If you go back to the original texts as well, like the Dead Sea Scrolls,
Sure.
you know, there is that there's that unconditional love aspect as well. You know, in coming from that space.
I think you're right. I think that's a good point, and I would agree with you, yeah.
So, okay, now, obviously, I don't believe your mother's ever come through for you since she's passed. Is that right?
That's very true. And you know what? I always remember at one time when I was I think I was the first person really to teach, you know, sort of psychic classes at proper adult education in the UK, really, you know. And I used to have a very, very well-learned student who always used to say, oh, it must be easy for you, the work that you do, because, you know, remember what your mother was like as a medium. Your pathway is easy for you, isn't it? But my mother always told me that she felt and she hoped that she'd done enough work in this world that she would progress onto higher levels. And I wouldn't say that she would never come through for me in feelings,
Yes.
but I don't get my mother through the way I get other people's people through. But then again, I don't think this might be a little, how can I say this? A lot of mediums and psychics might not agree with this, but I don't believe that you ever get anything for yourself. Not really, or for your family. It's for others, really. But specifically where my mother was concerned, you know, she told me, you know, I've done my time in this work, son, and you must do yours. And that's proved to be the case, really. And to accept sometimes because you miss the physical loss of people, don't you?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Through a medium is probably the only way that a lot of people can get sort of an understanding and an acceptance of the proof of the afterlife. And for me, I don't get that from my mother, but in my heart, I know it's the truth. And I'm glad for her progression and that she goes on and does other work on an higher level, perhaps.
Yes, I mean, who knows how many levels there are to go to? I mean, we're also doctrined in thinking that, you know, we go to a place called home or heaven, but what if there's multiple levels above that? And, you know.
I remember often having that discussion with Professor Hans Holzer, who, of course, really wasn't. I mean, most people just think that he was my mentor, but he was much closer to me than that. We were very close personal friends, and we came to I think the mutual conclusion in the end. As far as we understand it, there's about 7 levels, you know. And, you know, I mean, a lot of people think that as soon as they lose someone that they love, that they're going to go straight to I don't know, spirit world, nirvana, whatever, heaven, whatever you want to call it, you know. But, you know, we think that, you know, you go to what we call the second level of existence and then you start progressing from there, you know. And, yeah, I think you're right. A lot of people don't understand that there are a lot of levels that go higher and higher. We're not all up there with the great ones when we first pass.
No, and it begs the question, you know, what does the soul come down on this level to have an incarnation in a human body for, in your opinion?
Well, lessons to be learned, lesson to be learned. I mean, one of my other things that I've always been able to do really was to assist people with hypnotherapy and hypnotism. I mean, I took a very good training course with probably one of the greatest hypnotists, certainly in the UK, if not the world, Delavar, Gordon May. But, I could always do that sort of work from when I was a little kid, really. I could do that with people, And I think looking at my work in that field through past life experiences, you do come across people who've had incredible, fantastic, wonderful lives. And yet invariably, when you look at other past lives, they've had terribly difficult lives. Gosh, how could you enjoy being a king if you'd not been a pauper at some time, That's my view,
Well, yes, it's to experience the hot and the cold, and the only way to do that is to, come down on a level, it seems like, where you're suffering from an amnesia in a sense of forgetting your connection of who you truly are.
Sure. And I think it's all part of that learning structure of where you will be placed in those various levels when you make your progression to the higher life. And I suppose the more advanced you are, the more you've learned. I mean, of course, you've got to remember, Kevin, as you know, of course, but many mediums and psychics don't believe that we have past lives, that there's that sort of happening, that doesn't happen for anyone. Some of the leading mediums say, oh, no. And then you've got others like myself who say, oh, yes. And, I'm a little bit worried about the ones who don't believe in it, because I wonder what they're tuning into, because to me, it's such a fact.
Yeah.
The in progress of coming back and ultimately working your way towards, I suppose, the highest levels of higher consciousness that you could attain is part of everyone's progression, really, in this world and the next world,
Well, that comes down to whose truth is right. And who knows, maybe we create the reality that we're living in now, and we still create that reality when we've passed on. So if we're not prepared to think outside the box, maybe the reality when we pass on won't be there neither until we're prepared to cross that. I don't know.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I often think that the spirit world as we know it as spiritualists and mediums is a lot closer to this existence, perhaps just a little merge away, and that there are other sort of existences and other higher energy field forces, if you like. I think it's a good point that you make. I mean, I suppose the question is really, who knows until we make the next progression? But then we will know, won't we? Well, we might know about the next level.
Well, that's right. And what does knowing this information, looking into these subjects, how does that make us live a better life in a sense? How is that different to being an atheist, for example? What changes can it make in our life?
Kevin, I'm always amazed I assume that you have a mutual interest in this work, else you wouldn't present in the super program that you are. Of course, I'm sure that you follow that pathway. But, I think, let me give you an example. So many people, past and present, involved in the world of rock and roll, and I mean very major names, who've become personal friends of mine, really, or who knew my family. They always had that interest. They always had, and then always the sweetest souls. But a lot of these guys and gals, have become good spiritual people. And I think really, they've had a wonderful gift of music given to them. But as they've progressed in their spiritual life, they've become better people. And it's amazing, people who, I suppose, had what I would call very physical lives have found themselves walking the spiritual way by looking into and being involved in those sort of things, I know it's not the best of examples, but I think it's a darn good one,
That works for me, don't worry. So, okay, we're just going to take a break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained. The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still joined by author Philip Soloman. Philip, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Now, fascinating interview with yourself. I knew it was going to be. One thing that I like to look into as well is the way we treat each other, for example. If we came from that perspective that we are all connected, we all come from the same place, could that not bring about change in the world?
Well, I suppose that connection would give you a combined effort to change the world, hopefully for the better. I suppose that's a fair comment that you make. But do we all come from the same place? That's a challenging question in its own right, isn't it? I think there are people who maybe come from different aspects of higher energy fields. Now, I'm not trying to be coy in how I'm presenting that, but I've often felt that maybe some of us, do come from different places to others. But the collective energy in this planet, and I think it's the only planet of choice for progress for human beings, if you like, getting together and helping one another to go forward with a spiritual outlook, that can only be good for this world as we know it, can't it, really?
Well, yes, because when you come from that space of co-creatorship, of unconditional love, of oneness, of caring, of sharing, those qualities can make a difference. And, people don't want to come from that space.
Well, I think there are some people who maybe have an inner part to them that they don't always understand. We all have a good side and a bad side. And I think, if we choose to be more influenced from darker energies or our bad feelings, and, that's the way people go forward. I think collectively there are people who are like that in this world as well. I don't like to make the statement that everyone is good in this world, that it's all about love, because I think the world that we live in has a dark side as well, When you're given choices, whether you follow the spiritual pathway of helping yourself and the world to progress, or you choose perhaps to be moving on the darker side, or like most people, you just take the middle road. But it's all about progression, isn't it, really?
Of course.
Progression, and planet Earth as a progression, if you want to look at it in that context.
Yeah, when we talk about the dark energies and stuff like that, obviously where we end up, if call it home, just for example, I can't see that existing. I think it's just on this level that opposites happen, and the free will to allow it to happen. And what would be your take on that?
I probably wouldn't agree with you on that one, Kevin. I think if you come to this world and you have an evilness around you, I think you go to what we call the first level of existence, not the second level of existence. We're back to those levels, aren't we? People will say, there's been some awful people in this world who've done some terrible things to mankind, and people will say to me, let's put the rope around their neck, or let's guillotine them, or whatever you want to call. But you can't end their life like that. They'll go somewhere, and I believe that they'll go to the first level of existence. And I still believe that even such as these people have an opportunity to progress, maybe come back and live a better life, put things right to some extent. But our lovely parents, our lovely children, those that we love, I don't believe that they go to the same level as those people. They go to what I would call a second or a third or higher level. And that's where most of us mediums tune into. I hear some psychics and mediums and say, I attune to the higher masters, I do this, I do that. I tell you in truth, what us mediums do mostly is link for you, your loved ones from the second level, your mother, your father, your friends. Those are the ones who mostly have an interest in your life, the same way that you do in theirs, you know. I'm not saying that there are not times when we do link and work with higher energies, but 90% of the time our work really is working between the two worlds. And most of our loved ones, in my opinion, go to round about that second level or third level, if you want to build it in that terms.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where those messages, if you like, that's where they come from to help us in those ways. Not always right in everything that they say, mind. Another idea people have that, oh, you know, my mother's come through, my father's come through, all wisdom, all wonderful, marvellous. They're just the same as they were in this world. They still can be wrong about things, you know. They can guide you and help you and show you the love or otherwise that they did when they were in this world, but they're no different really until they progress.
Well, I mean, do you think there's, when we come down to this level, that possibly there's a veil that's put over us purposefully to have lessons? Because how could you have lessons if you knew the answer, right? But there's a veil that's put over us to purposely forget our true connection of who we truly are. So when we do go back and it's made aware to us because that connection's back there, we are then truly who we were without the darkness, if you want to call it that, or anything else. You know, we are back to love, and that person that hurt me in this life, who's then with me in the afterlife, I just feel love for them because that's who they truly are.
What can I say? I couldn't agree more with you. This is why I place such a great emphasis on people having awareness of past lives, you know, and understanding probably what makes them tick or what happens to them in this life, because I think it's all one sort of big wheel that's turning, you know, and a lot of other little cogs are all around it that are relevant to where you are and what's happening in your life today. This is why, as I'm just call myself a leading medium. I'm just a medium, really. But I think, you know, we have a wonderful opportunity to have an understanding of progression. And for me, progression is part of past lives as well, you know. And if that's what you're saying, then what can I say? I think you got the grip of it, you know.
Okay. Now, why do you think you chose to be a psychic medium in this life?
Don't think I probably did. I mean, for many years until I was about 18, certainly till about 18, you know, I wanted to be a singer in a rock and roll band. That's what I wanted to do. I think my mother was quite opposed to that, seeing the life and the way other people have ended up. But I mean, I think that path was probably, I mean, you've quoted who my parents were and my ancestry, if you like. And I mean, I think having an ability that I have been given, there's no doubt that I would place there for that reason. But till I was about 18, I wanted to be in a rock and roll band. And I was good. I was a good guitar player, a good singer. I think I could have done it. But I think pathways are set before us, really. And my work has been as a teacher and as a medium, really. I think that's what I came into the world for. I must have chosen it to some extent on the other side. But no, I wanted to be a rock and roll singer till I was about 18.
Well, I do believe that we are where we are because it's it's the best for us.
Sure.
With free will there as well, and you could go down that road. I think that perhaps, I mean, I would like to think that there's not something overbearing me that's saying you must do this, you must do that. I think that, you know, surely there must be free will in choosing the most suitable thing for our soul before we come down here.
Absolutely. I think that you come into the world and you're given a lot of choices. I mean, ultimately, it's like, you know, if you want to drive the car from Cardiff, where you are, to terrible place to get to, isn't it? But, you know, if you've got to get to London eventually, there's 4 or 5 different ways you can get to London, and you make those choices, you know, how you want to go about driving it or how you want to travel to it. But ultimately, I think there's an ultimate progression that's there for you. But yeah, of course you do. I mean, you know, I'm sure if I'd really wanted to do it, you know, I would have kicked on with the music thing, you know, and all the rest of it, you know. But at the end of the day, I think I would still have come back to be what I am, you know, a professional medium, you know.
Yeah, and so that is your full-time profession now, is that right?
Well, I hope so. Don't make you much money. I mean, a lot of these young people today, they see us and they think, we sort of have rock star lives, but I think maybe that's the one or two who get the. I mean, I've done the theatres, as you know, over the years, but I think now as they've got regular theatre work and the TV work, they might, do quite well out of it financially. But this way of life don't make you much money. If you break even, and I mean, I think that's probably about the best of it for most of us. I mean, someone like my mother, I never come across I've worked with all the top mediums, but I've never come across anyone who was better than my mother. She never made a penny out of it in her life, Everything was done for nothing. And I don't know, charity work's been a great part of my life as well, I mean, I've always felt the need to help others. And I don't know, I don't think it's about making a living. I think it's about getting by and having enough to feed yourself, to clothe yourself, and to have a roof above your head. And if you're lucky enough that the spirit will give you a few luxuries on top of that, well, so be it. But there's not a great deal of money to be made in this unless you're on TV every week, I don't think.
Well, I think even that's had its day, to be honest with you. I think
it's a good point. It's a good point that you make.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, I mean, there's so much stuff to watch out there nowadays. I think conventional media, in a sense, and the way we consume our media has changed so much. And I think I think also a lot of the networks are scared of taking shows like this. Even though the public would be okay with it and they would enjoy it, I just think there's too much fear base there.
It's a great point that you made, Kevin. And actually, you made 3 points there. So can I? I mean, I think the problem is really, so many people have watched psychics and medium on the TV, on these half-hour shows or 45-minute shows, which most programs are made, and they don't realise that there's probably about six hours of filming that's been cut down to that 45 minutes. They see all the itch, and I don't know, perhaps when they go and see the shows in various places, it's not quite the same as what they've seen on television. And in some way, although it starts the interest and gets people to look at a more philosophical overview of spiritual life, in a lot of ways, perhaps they're a little disappointed. But at the same time, many, many times, well, not many times, but half a dozen times, I've been approached to do television programs. And it's always the same thing. We're going to edit it, we're going to film you and then we're going to edit it. If anyone wanted me to come that way, I just want to come on and just do it live. And let the general public see what you do and get the real feel for it to judge themselves, not an edited version of what looks good for TV, because I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good for an overview of spirituality, spiritualism, or the psychic world. It's a package that's put together that presents not what it really is, isn't it? Do you not agree?
Oh, absolutely. But, and that's why we've steered away from, trying to get the show out on mainstream. And, we're setting up our own network and heading straight towards the right community that's interested in those shows and bringing them together and trying to send that message out there that of some of the principles that we've spoken about tonight.
That's good. That's good. Well done.
And but like you say, I mean, I don't think being spiritual means being poverty stricken. I don't think so.
Well, as you say, I mean, I think you've got to. I'm probably different to most people, but I mean, to me, I think. Well, I mean, people have called me the psychic to the star. Well, it's a nice title, and I think there's someone else who's sort of taken that on board in recent.
Yes.
That's another story.
No, that's true. Yeah.
So often people like that, they don't pay you, Kevin. I mean, they become your friends if you're really good, and you're really good. But they become your friends, and you may do the work. But there isn't a lot of celebrities often don't pay you,
No.
And
no.
Your private readings and stuff like that, I suppose, And I mean, I always try to, I don't know, help people out if I can. I mean,
Well, I think that's an important part. So I've just got. I think what you do is fantastic. You know, helping people out. If you put others first, you're only putting yourself first as well, in a sense, because what goes around comes around, and it's a great thing to help people. And I mean, that's what we're here to do when you're spiritually awake as well. But I think sometimes the industry gets a bad names from psychics who aren't genuine, and it's like it's like anything. You get bad builder shows on TV. You get all sorts of rip-off shows that show on TV that they've been taken for a ride, these people, and that's just the same as the psychic industry. I mean, but yet it gets such a bad rap.
I think the problem is, to be honest with you, Kevin, I mean, you started off talking to me about, I don't know, not probably old days, but 20 or 30 years ago, and people would go along who had an interest in developing themselves as the psychic side, even the mediumistic side, and they would put months and years into sitting in an open circle, what we call an open circle, or taking teaching classes, or various workshops, and people like myself would bring them along, and when they were ready, they'd start to do a little bit of work. But the problem is today, people see you in a magazine, and I write for a few big ones, or I've done TV work as well, I suppose. But they see you on there and they think, oh, I can do that. And there's more to it, really. I always used to say to my students when I was training people, developing people, I suppose I should say, really, well, while you're doing this work, the first thing we're going to get you on the counselling course as well. What? Yeah, we're going to get you on the counselling course so you can be accountable, know what you can say, learn how to talk to people, see the two sides, use that natural psychic ability you have, but learn to counsel in a professional way as well. And the ones who would listen to you and go forward in that was invariably and take their time and sort of take the stage or the rostrum or wherever they work at the right time are the ones who stay the distance. But people go and see these people, and maybe maybe their intentions are good, and maybe they think that they're in a position or they're ready to do the work, but sometimes they're not. And unfortunately, if you're one of those people who has those experiences of being read for by somebody who perhaps isn't as developed at that stage as they might be, and you're disappointed, you go away, don't you? And you think, oh, it's all rubbish, and it's all this and it's all that. But years ago, people used to train and develop properly. Of course, the Spiritualist Church has its own college at Stansted, which does wonderful work. And there are great workshops that are available today if people will study them and take them forward. As I understand, you're looking at doing some of those things yourself. And I take my hat off to you. But I'm not sure you can just learn this work from a book or just decide that, okay, it was nice this week, working as a secretary or a lorry driver, but next week I'm going to become a professional medium. It doesn't work like that.
No, and I really do like what you had to say there. So, well, stay tuned, and we're just going to take a quick break.
The Moore Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The Moore Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The Moore Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The Moore Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The Moore Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome back to the show. I'm still joined by author Philip Soloman. Now, Philip, just before the ad break there, I just wanted to ask you one point before we get into your book as well. And it's when you're in contact with spirits, in a sense, how do they come through you? Is it through clairaudience or clairvoyance, or, how does it work for you?
Well, I'm one of these people who, we often speak about what do these things mean? Clairvoyance, seeing the spirit, clairsentient, sensing the spirit, clairsentient, feeling. There's so many titles. It's seeing, sensing, and hearing, isn't it? If you want to break it down into very simple terms. I've always been able to do all three from when I was a very little boy. Most mediums or psychics tend to be clairaudient. They hear the voice in their head as if they were a telephonist, perhaps in that sort of way. But Kevin, people will sometimes say to me, I'm contacted with spirits all the time. No, you're not. No, you're not. You have to learn again through development to open yourself at just the right time and allow the spirit energy, the spirit people to come through and work with you at just the right time. Goodness gracious me, you couldn't be doing this work all the time. You can't be an open channel all the time, or you'd very quickly be burnt out if you did. But, you have to put yourself in the front. If I was giving you a reading, Kevin, then I would look at your picture, or if you were in my company, I would look towards your face and tune, and I would be working with you. And your loved ones, hopefully, if they wish to, would come through and work for you. But I have to open myself and prepare myself for that. Some people, this will make you, well, it won't make you laugh because of your experience. But, I'm so some guys sometimes say, oh, would you like to come to our party? Oh, yeah, that'd be nice. And I think they're thinking, oh, we'll have the medium here. But you just get ordinary feeling when I come to your party. I have to put myself in the frame of mind and open myself to work. And so many times I've explained this over and over again to fledgling mediums and psychics and those who wish to do this work. We're not always an open channel. We have to learn to open and close ourselves in an appropriate and professional way.
I wish, there was more people like you that could, come from the space that you do, because it would really give it a different structure. I mean, I've meet some mediums with all the best intentions and an actual gift, but they've never even read a textbook on any of the alternative subjects, for example, just to open their minds to something else. I mean, yes, they may have a gift, but there's still a gift as a human person. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I agree with you. I mean, as a young man, I studied all the ancient philosophies. I was interested in all sorts of different religion, creeds and pathways. And I think there were times, when people would sort of say to you who loved you or care for you, oh, what are you looking into that stuff for? And I said, well, because I want to know if George Harrison is getting something here, then I'm not quite on the way. I want to know what it's about, And I would go and study those sort of philosophies. And I think you're quite right. I certainly always encourage my students to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, my great ambitions, Kevin, and it's not there yet, and I'm not getting any younger these days, but I've always had this ambition that I wanted to see how work in its wider context presented it as a university course. And why not? But, it's still something of a closed door subject, isn't it, But I think if you were going to take a belief in the psychic world and the energies that we know are the truth and are out there, and you'd have to present it in an academic way that would look at all facets of different pathways of religion, culture. But why not? Why not put this on as a university course? I'm sure there are others who will come after me.
Of course. And I think your mother and your father have really, their influence on you is probably could push you into this direction. It really could, from just speaking to you. I mean, you mention age. Age is nothing.
Well, perhaps you're right. It's just a number, isn't it, really? But
of course, you're eternal forever. It's just the number of the human body. Well, okay, let's quickly just get into your book, Beyond Death: Conditions in the Afterlife. Now, fascinating book, by the way. And now we're going to just go straight into a few of the interviews that you did. Now, you channeled...
Before we start that, Kevin, Of course, that book was co-written with the great Professor Hans Holzer, in my opinion, one of the greatest parapsychologists and investigators of the paranormal that's ever been. So I must say that was co-written with Professor Hans Holzer, though I did write most of it.
I mean, I've seen some of his books. I've never read any. Is he still with us, or?
No. Hans passed over now, quite a few years ago.
Right.
still keep very close links with the family. And over in the States, his one daughter, Alexandra, does a lot of work. I think she does some TV work as well. Keep in touch with the family, you know. But a great man, really.
Well, I'll look in more into him once I've, in the next day or so, definitely.
It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've got the words of Princess Diana. Now, tell me how that came about and what actually was said.
No different to anyone else, really. I mean, I'd have to go back to Hans. You know, a lot of those celebrities, I didn't want to put them in the book, really. I mean, he was very hard to work with in the early days, you know, before we wrote the book. I mean, I think it's the first time a medium in a very serious investigation of paranormal, because they tend to come from a different avenue, don't they, really, have written the book together. But, you know, she just come through the same as anyone else. I mean, we had people like Adolf Hitler come through. One of the big shocks, we had Elvis Presley, you know. And, you know, I thought, I don't want to do this, you know. Every medium or psychic who has ever written a big commercial seller like that one have come up with those things, you know. But Hans made me do it. And when he finished, you know, he says, Philip, I'm going to tell you something. You don't know this. He says, but I've been friends with Elvis for 30 years. And every book that I ever wrote, he had the first copy. They were close, you know, they were that close. And, you know, I could give things that he would prove it was true. Oh, gosh, I mean, you've got people out there who say, well, I don't want to, you know, I'm one of these guys, you know, Kevin, I'll never, ever knock other mediums or say bad things. There are some that do, but I just don't want to ever be in that school. But I think if you're going to give that sort of thing from celebrities, you've got to have someone like Professor Holzer who can be in between. You could know the people and could check what you've given was real. Because it might just be your imagination. It might not be, or you might be faking it, mightn't you? But even in that book, we had things coming through from Hitler. Didn't want to do that. But Hans knew that there were, I don't know whether I should be, why not? Hans knew that there were people who were descendants of Hitler who were still not very far away from his home in Manhattan, and that he could check some of the things that came through. But, you know, for all the celebrities in that book, I thought the really interesting ones were just ordinary, everyday people who came through.
Well, that's all they are anyway. I mean, we all come from the same source. We're all, you know, we choose these roles to take on a celebrity and stuff, and we probably get lost in the egoic part as well when we, you know, can never remember who we truly are anyway. So, you know.
No, that's spooky, because that's almost the argument that Hans presented to me that I have in the book. Well said.
Yeah. Well, just very quickly then on Princess Diana, and we'll skip forward. But what was the message? Do you remember?
She was a lady who just come. No, I can't remember it off I mean, I've written 20 books, not just that one.
No.
And I suppose I've done thousands of transmediumship sessions over the years. But I think as I remember the message coming through, I think it was just to, you know, be kind to each other. And I don't think she held any particular grudges against anyone. I had a funny experience before I did that book as well. I once had a call from a lady. I'm not going to say who it was, but I had a friend who knew Diana pretty well and was in that circle. And she put a call through, and I'm not going to say it was, because you can never be 100% sure, but I'm pretty certain that it was Diana. And maybe that made the link to some extent that she would come through later on, but she just come through as very blessed lady, really, with a lot of love, you know, and forgiveness, really. I don't think she come through with any of the bitterness that I've heard other people say that she comes through with towards certain individuals.
No, because that's not love.
No, she was just a lovely, loving girl, wasn't she? And, you know, you're the same on the other side. That's how they come through. And I'll tell you something, I don't want to lead your interview. That would be very unprofessional of me. But even Hitler, you know, I hate to admit it, but he was rather very nice to me. He still had very stubborn views, and I still think he's got a lot to learn, of course. But he was quite respectful to me, you know, and even I was a bit amazed by some of the things that he had to say. But And there was things that didn't go into the book, of course, Kevin, that only Hans and myself would know about, But what an interesting character.
Well, that's I mean, the Adolf Hitler incarnation. Let's just look at that for a minute. I mean, who's to say that the people that did the most wrong were the people that carried his orders out, in a sense, and they went to a completely different level to where we think Hitler actually ended up. Maybe Hitler didn't go to the lower levels. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but
He did go to the first level, but I think he very, very strongly. I do remember that, really. I mean, it's a good few years back when I wrote that book, but I do remember that he came through and really very strongly expressing the view that a lot of the things that had happened were through other people, and not that he'd sort of taken the can for a lot of things that really weren't his direction. But I think he was coming into I mean, if you kill 6 million people and you contribute to a world war, goodness gracious me, you've got to have something to learn. But he also reminded me that it was also declared war on Germany. I suppose he's got a point, but I mean, he was forgetting that they'd invaded Poland, who we had, agreements with to help.
Well, I mean, when you look at it from a soul level, the World War II taking place, look at some of the great things that came out of it as well. The United Nations and other such things. Who knows that maybe these great events like this and all the suffering, it's the growth that some people get out of it. I mean, I hate to see suffering. I can't stand it. But there is always a bigger picture, isn't there, that we don't get.
Well, you may well be right, Kevin. I don't have the answer to that. I don't think anyone in this world does. But I take your comments very, very well considered. And even in a way, I suppose the awfulness of war, perhaps we can come to have an understanding that if there's some sort of position that it has to be for us to progress. It's hard to accept that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I can take the position of what you're saying. Strangely enough, I've had a little instance these last few months where I've been talking to some people. My great uncle was one of the first soldiers killed in the First World War in the Expeditionary Force, and in France on the Belgian border. And it's funny that you should say that, really, because I think if it was all for nothing and these things didn't have to be, would we ever come to terms with losing not just those people that passed away, but the people that suffered and those that didn't come to this world because that energy of their life force ended in that first and second, and of course lots of other world wars and other lots of, because we never stop being at war, do we? Somewhere in the world there's always a war going on.
Well, you could say that. Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from this, but when man disembarks on, his armies and gets rid of his weapons, maybe that's the first step to real sort of, a different way of being, in a sense, towards each other. Maybe
that's when the greatest medium who ever lived will come back to us. Who knows?
Who knows, man? Who knows?
That's a challenging statement, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what is your sort of vision for the future as well, would you say?
Well, I think, as I've said, I think you have a life path that you put into in this world that you have to follow. And I think planet Earth is similar to an individual's life pathway. I think there's some sort of ultimate start, beginning, middle. I don't think it ever ends as we know it, but I think it's set out to go forward in certain ways. And there again, we're given sort of, I suppose, I don't think we can have governorship of the world, but I think we're given guidance of it, I mean, people say to me, well, what about all the other planets out there? There's got to be other planets out there that's got to, energies on there that are thinking, and maybe there are. But as far as I understand it, for the progression of human beings, this is the only planet of choice, to coin a phrase, And, we have it in our hands to take it forward and make it a great place, or to make it not such a great place. But then again, you're back to that learning pattern, aren't you? That perhaps it's the pathway of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Now, how can people get a reading with yourself and also get a hold of a copy of your books?
Well, the best thing to do is just send me an email direct or go to my website. I mean, all you really need to do, we don't want to advertise, I suppose, but Google or any of the search engines, put Philip Soloman psychic medium into one of those search engines, and you'll find my website, and send me an email, and either me or one of the people who do a little bit of different things for me in relation to books or readings or bookings of that nature, I'll get back to them, and we'll do our very best to help them in whatever they want us to do for them, if it's possible. Can't always do everything that we're asked to do, Kevin, but we do our best.
Well, Philip Soloman, thank you so much for joining us today.
I've thoroughly enjoyed it, Kevin. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on the show. So until next time, be safe.
The More Show is in partnership with Ozark Mountain Publishing, taking readers beyond the unexplained.
Visit themoreshow.co.uk/shop to purchase products and services from your favourite past guests. If you're new to this site, you can also catch up on the previous television and radio shows through YouTube and the More Show website.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.